Right, one thing I'll say first and foremost, bearing in mind from what Richard's reporting's done, it turns out most of the shit Hunter said, surprise, surprise, was a lie or exaggeration. Like, basically, even the things he claimed were sort of evidence, as far as I can tell, that was even scoffed the way it was reported, probably wouldn't hold up in court. Some of it even legitimately looks like this guy, no joke, picked the player on the team who I'll just say is the weirdest and attempted to exploit that like social awkwardness to just make him incriminate himself and is secretly for. Like, by the way, as soon as you're even doing that, I almost don't care what the evidence is that you produce. Like, it's fruit of the rotten tree is what you call it. Like, how can I believe, for all I know, you chopped it all up, mate? You know what I mean? So basically, the reason I set this up is because everyone, even like half the pros, hated these motherfuckers for the last like 3 months or something. And I have to say what you like about them as a team. Fucking hell, they've just performed in the server, Tommy. It's mental. Like I'm actually low key, especially now that it feels like they didn't cheat. I'm mad impressed that they're actually just being able to put up with this like barrage of hate because everyone wanted them to fail.
Yeah, no, I mean they've been very good the whole time. It would have been understandable if you saw, bit of a fall there, particularly because some of their players are actually younger, like TeSeS and Stout are still pretty young, but they've, I guess, refreshed too. But like they just performed really well throughout the whole time. Like they've stayed one of the top teams, I think. I think even last year, like when they first kind of burst to the very top of the scene, I think many people thought that it was just going to, it's like a function of the online era. It's going to be different once we return to offline play, and just haven't seen any signs of that. So it's pretty impressive how they've just continuously played that well amidst all the cheating accusations and everything. I mean, we remember how that was from the all of my serve boost era, and that wasn't even cheating. That was just like breaking, potentially breaking rules. And like the Fnatic guys were saying, like, oh, we considered quitting, like it was so hard, like it's like tough mentally, blah blah blah. And these guys basically just haven't said a word. They haven't uttered a single word. They've just gone to work and taken care of business. And obviously, like they lost that game against Astralis. I think they lost against Sinners too. The Astralis game, whatever Danish battle, but like outside of that group stage, like they've just looked very good. And worth keeping in mind also that like I think they were already guaranteed to make the major before this event. So like again, don't want to take it back to the format, but like there just isn't anything for them to play for here. Everybody else is like dying to make it there. Everybody else is like doing their best to prepare, and for them it's really just like let's just go there and play some games, get warmed up, and then be ready for the coming tournaments after.
Sure. Yeah, people don't know that story because they told it so slowly over the years. Like I got the first interview with Jdubs who said, some of us might have quit, and they're like over the years it got more and more specific, but they never ever technically, as far as I remember, I think Jdubs maybe hinted that maybe he said like one name or something. They never actually totally explicitly said who the players were. But if you ever break it down, it isn't hard to figure out. Like think about it logically. If 2 players were going to stay and were like, I don't think we should retire, and 3 were like, oh, I'm a bit nervous about this, right? Let's just be real. Flusher was obviously just like, that's the least of my problems, mate. Who gives a fuck? And then the other one is JW was like that meme where it's like James Franco in the fucking noose on his neck, like first time. It's like they don't give a fuck, mate. It was obviously the others that were like, I've never been hated on before, and then they were like, oh really? Like so anyway, I feel like that was an obvious break. But yeah, I agree. Just doing that boost and people hating on him made him almost quit. So these guys respect. It's actually making me now that I feel like they didn't cheat. I'm now really really excited to see their future. And then the other thing is this. I'll also just briefly touch on that. Listen, a lot of the other teams, the top 10's a mess right now. Yeah, these results could have happened in any format. The problem is this. If this was a tournament, a real tournament that they were trying to win, and this was best of 3 in the group stage, there's no universe Heroic is in this position. Heroic is a best of 3 team, mate, and they're pretty good. Like, you can get them on one map. They're not just going to get blown out over 2 maps. So, like,
well, I mean, also, I don't think they would have even been here, even in the best of 1 round robin universe, if they needed to win. But the fact is, like, they just did not need to win. Like they only needed, like they didn't even need to show up. They could have just stayed home. They could have just said like, we don't really care about this. We'll just wait until the next one. And like again, not the best format. Don't want to get into that, but like you just can't look at their results and like think that they hold the same weight that they do for the other teams here.
And then the thing I always have found incredible about the Heroic team is normally, as even plebs know by now, the HLTV rating or just like a stat like, who gets the biggest KDR, normally the numbers will sort of tell you. It's like football. It's like obviously the guy who's the fucking central midfielder doesn't score the most goals. You can immediately figure out the team structure from usually the stats. This team, good luck with that, mate, because the crazy thing about this team is I still don't really understand. Like, I still don't know. Is KD actually a really good IGL? He did have 100 in his ear half the time. Like, how can he be the AWPer and the IGL? And now look at the rest of the team. Like, this just looks like, aside from the shush, it's like, aren't a bunch of these just sort of like riflers who could all do these roles, or they all do each other's roles, or there's overlap, and yet somehow they sort of like consistently all seem to perform over if you give them enough time. What do you think of this squad? I think it's a very uniquely put together team.
Well, the most surprising part of that actually to me is that they went through those roster changes and then like it seemed like nothing changed. Like you could have just believed that they had the exact same players before, exact same players after. You would have thought that, particularly given the way that they became a good team, which is that like like a long grind with the same core, slowly making some changes and like slowly building chemistry, slowly building up the fundamentals, and then becoming better. That seems like the kind of story arc where once you're forced to make some changes, you think like, oh man, like it's gonna be tough to like rebuild everything. It might take some time, and it turns out they just never skipped a beat. Like they made those roster changes, and like nothing changed. It's I mean, presumably you have to give Cadian a bunch of credit for that because he is the leader of the team. I don't know who else would get that. I mean, they just made it work regardless of the players. I think they have a pretty versatile playing style in general, and obviously like some of the youngsters like Stown are just very good. So gives you a bit of a leeway, but like very honestly, like very impressive how they managed to just continue performing after the changes as if nothing changed, particularly given that like it's not like you have like any sort of veteran players that you could rely on in the team at this point. Like you really don't. Like you might think Cadian because he's been around for so long, but like he never had success in any team before this.
He wasn't really a tier 1 player.
Yeah. I mean, he was around. I think like in fact like I think the thing people probably best remembered him for before was that he lost that 1-on-1 against some female CS player. Yeah, I mean like that's not the track record in the public eye of like somebody who's like of course gonna build a great team. So look, they're a very good team. I think they're gonna win this game, and I think they're gonna be one of the favorites to make at least top 4 at the major. Like I just would not read into their group stage results at all here.
Yeah, agreed. I will say, I know everyone in this team for the whole time, even before they got TeSeS, always picked Stown as the player who should make it right. I get it, because if you ever watch his game, it's like he doesn't just have aim. He has a little bit of polish to his game as well. And also, year on year, sort of gradually improved. But I have to say, if you want to look for raw eye test, it's got to be TeSeS in this team. Like this guy actually genuinely, this is a player that if you're like an Astralis, you should have been targeting the whole time. And as far as I know, they probably were. Like this guy has obviously like really good aim when he's on his game. Like he's the guy where if he kills you with a 3-kill, it's like the Forest shit where it's like just snap, 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 and they're just all dead. So, I mean, assuming he hasn't cheated, so again, we don't have to fucking diss the guy. I think, again, that's the other crazy thing about this team. In a world where Astralis the whole time has been like, who do you get and who should I pick up next? And is there anyone good who's like these guys have never put a fucking foot wrong with the recruitment. They've just picked like the players that have just slotted right in, like you said, and they're just good players, even at a higher level of play. That's so rare that it happens.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, like if you think about this from the Astralis lens, like they were the very best, literally the greatest of all time, and like you're not thinking about making changes when you're there. And then it like arguably you could have made the case that even as they started sliding during the online era, like that was at least partly because of tournaments being played online. Like I think that's a reasonable case. And then like it's hard to decide when becomes the time, first of all, that like now you need to make a change when it's all online. Like you start dropping, it's all online, you think it's because it's online, but then there's no return to land. Like what do? Do you just continue losing online, or do you force yourself to make some changes? And then the other piece is that like if you talk to the players, and like obviously like Astralis on paper has been one of the teams that's given more power to Zonic, more power to the team rather than the roster, but like sure, that sounds great on paper, but like in practice, like if this is the team that's won the most majors, won the most tournaments ever in a couple years time span, best teams of all time, like how do you just go in and say like, okay boys, like we know you had a great run, you were the best team for like 2 years straight, but now you lost IEM online spring, and we're gonna bring in this youngster to replace Magisk. Like it's just a tough sell. So it comes back to the point that we made earlier, which is that you can't necessarily pick up the players, and I guess you made the point about Valde. Like I think he would have been a great fit, but can't necessarily even get those players sometimes. You can't always get the players that you would want, and like there really is no like clean farm system for the players that are on the come up. Astralis obviously have been trying, like they've had a 6-player roster, 7-player roster, some of it because they've wanted, some of it because they out of their control, but like it's hard to get the best players in those roles, because if you're TeSeS, say, before he joined Heroic, you could be the 6-player, 7-player at Astralis. Like sounds good on paper, but like look at what happened to Bubsky. He's playing now, but last year did nothing. Like he was the star
Wasn't a
player
great
of Mad
advertisement
Lions
for that system, was it?
Yeah, yeah, and like he never got to play. So like it's just tough to make that decision versus going somewhere where you can play all the time, go to all the tournaments, and like actually improve. It's not an easy choice, and like that's the issue when you don't really have substitutions in Counter-Strike. Like that's why it makes it so different, and that's why the comparisons to sports are always flawed.
Right, what I'll do is, just because I don't know how much time we've got left, I'll do my bet on this game. Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.